Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. One of the new political leaders, and I mean a leader, to emerge from the Obama campaign is first-time voter Sara Haile-Mariam. And she's my guest today. And welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Ronnie.
So you are going to be a political leader, aren't you, someday?
I'm working on it.
But you didn't plan to be when you started.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Do you want me to speak a little bit about, this whole campaign's been extremely transformative.
Yeah.
In that prior to this election, I was completely apolitical. I was the embodiment of the young person who was completely disengaged with the political process, thought that it was corrupt, thought that it was, not productive. And so I just steered clear until Barack Obama came along.
And how did you meet? Did you meet him, or what happened?
I did.
How did you get into this? I mean, how long? When did it start? Was it early?
2007.
It was early,
Yeah.
in the fall or winter or something like that. Yeah.
In the early spring.
Oh, early spring.
I saw him on the Daily Show, and I thought he was very charismatic.
Yeah.
But that really didn't push me into wanting to volunteer for him right away. And so a coworker of mine invited me to volunteer at a Generation Obama event, and I went, and he spoke, and I just remember thinking that this is a presidential candidate who's articulating my very worldview, and it was just kind of unbelievable to me that there was this. He was a politician, and he didn't really fit the mold, and he was able to kind of spark my curiosity. And so
what's the mold that you had of a politician?
The mold is just kind of, you think of political leaders and you think of, people that cater to the special interests and cater to the PACs and are just more concerned with what they get out of a situation or what they can do to get ahead. And I didn't see that in Barack Obama. I saw a politician who was challenging the American people to come together. And I remember after I saw him speak at the Hammerstein Ballroom, I went back and looked at the 2004 convention speech, and I was so struck by his honesty. And he was so candid, and I think that was something that I wouldn't typically attribute to a politician.
Did you ever get close to a politician? I mean, did you listen to politicians, for instance, on Sunday morning?
No,
Nothing.
No.
Because you didn't believe what they said, or what?
No, I was just
you just didn't care. But do you come from a political family?
My family has been political. I grew up I was born in Ethiopia, and I came here when I was 2, and so my family was involved in the politics there. Yeah. But in this country, my father watched the news. He tried to encourage me to watch the news, and I was completely uninterested.
And what do they think about you now?
Oh, they're shocked. They're completely shocked. They didn't take me seriously when I started, and my dad was concerned that I was wasting my time, that this Barack Obama guy wasn't going to get very far.
Yeah, well, that was a common thing, wasn't it? Yeah. But did you believe from the beginning?
I did.
Yeah. The evidence that you worked very hard in this campaign is that you have a seat at the convention, right?
Yeah, at the inauguration.
I mean, at the inauguration.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty hard thing to get.
Yeah.
So what did you do? Before we start that, you're a senior at NYU.
I am.
And you got through the semester,
I did.
Year.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. So tell me what you did.
Well, I started out as a grassroots organizer. I was just helping local volunteers, create visibility events, and we did a lot of walking through the streets of New York during the primaries.
Did you walk with us down Broadway?
I did.
You did.
I did a few
early in that cold weather.
Yeah. And then the Women for Obama rally.
Right. That big rally, and you were a speaker there.
I was.
Because some people had heard you speak someplace else, right? And that was a great talent you had, so that was good to do, right?
Yeah. It was a lot of.
So were you working out of the little headquarters?
I did some work out of there.
Yeah.
I did much more field work in the primaries than I did in the general.
Right. And what happened then after that? Did you start to travel?
Yeah. I went to Maryland initially after Feb 5. Then I went to Wisconsin. I went to Pennsylvania 5 or 6 times. Registered voters there, canvassed voters there. It became part of my weekly routine. It was, get through the school week, get through the work week, and then go to Pennsylvania.
And you went on these trips that you didn't have to cost you a fortune, or did you pay yourself?
I paid myself. I went broke for Obama,
Right, you
but
did.
it was completely
It's all right.
worth it.
I'm fascinated at what you learned when you went out to these different areas. First of all, the Obama campaign was so. I don't know how to say it. It was such a combination of so many things.
Yeah.
There were people out there just doing what they wanted to do, right? Then there was a very tightly controlled campaign.
Yeah.
It was very well planned. People were trained at what they did, and they knew the restrictions within which they had to operate.
Yeah.
So where did you fit in?
I think I was more of on the outside of that. I feel like the campaign is as strict as they were and as, you know, deliberate everything was. They were also very receptive to grassroots involvement, and they tapped into the curiosity and ingenuity and creativity of my generation.
Yeah.
And so I was, you know, able to create YouTube videos to promote fundraising. I created a YouTube video that, you know, ended up on NPR on Mother's Day, and you know, and they attributed it as an actual campaign video. It wasn't.
You just did it.
Yeah.
And what did it show?
It was a bunch of little kids asking their moms to vote for Obama.
I think I saw that actually. Yeah. And then what else have you done?
Wow, it's been a lot of organizing.
Yeah. What did you learn about people?
I learned a lot about people.
Yeah.
It was actually, canvassing made the campaign and what we were doing real to me, because you heard about all of these people that needed assistance, and a lot of the neighborhoods I canvassed in, it was in those neighborhoods of people who needed assistance, and so their gratitude and their stories stuck with me and kept me going. And I actually met a man in Maryland who's in his 60s, and he was a youth activist when, you know, in the 1960s, and he had mentioned that he walked with his friends from Philadelphia to DC, and then every time they walked through, they got postcards and wrote one thing they wanted changed about Washington on the back of those postcards and delivered them to the White House. And he's leaning over his cane, he looks at me and two of my friends, and he goes, "I can't do that anymore, but you can. Get that man elected." And so it was just constantly, the stories, they just kept you inspired, kept you encouraged, and they did so to an extent that it wasn't about the campaign after a while. It was about helping those people in the long term.
And so do you think that that's going to happen?
I do. I do. I think that what Barack Obama realizes, and I think it's evidenced by the actions being taken by his inauguration committee. Right now they're in the process of organizing a national weekend of service where they're calling on Americans from across the country to engage in community service activities next weekend. And I think what he realizes is that in order to really bring about long-term sustainable change, it's going to require the activity of the entire population. We're all going to have to get involved, and you know, it's going to be young people bringing what they have to the table and learning from an older generation. And it's going to be just kind of, there's got to be this generational back and forth, this consensus that I don't think we've had in quite some time. And so I think he realizes that, you know, by advocating for change coming from the ground up, he's asking the American people to take on a tremendous amount of responsibility in their lives, where we're no longer living for ourselves, we're living with one eye towards what our actions are going to mean to the next generation.
Do you think that people think it's corny?
I'm sure they do. It is a little bit, but at the same time, I think once we start to see how it impacts people on the ground, it's going to stop being corny and start getting, you know, much more real.
And do you think also that it will help the advocacy and the pressure on the Congress then to react more to the president's proposals?
Oh, absolutely.
So it's got a very political undertone.
Yeah, it does.
Now, what's happening in New York?
New York, in terms of the community service weekend, there are soup kitchens. There are, wow, I know that you're actually working on
we have a project on the West Side.
Yeah.
Which is to put cartons or to collect cans of food from each apartment house. Some people want to make it give each apartment house a quota based on I don't know what. But anyway, and then deliver the food to food pantries. Yeah. And we're going to start that, and I think we'll do it continuously after the week is over. Okay. And we call it "We Can." Yes, we can, because it's a can, right?
Yeah.
So that's a little corny too.
No.
How do people know what's happening
they can go
in
to
these activities?
Yes, they can go to usaservice.org, and you know, they're being encouraged to create their own events or to identify events. I know in Brooklyn there's something called a Warm Up to Change, where it's a coat drive. And so there really is, and what you just mentioned, it's very creative.
And they tell you how to communicate with that group.
Yeah, well, they can actually, if they have questions, email nyobamaservice@gmail.com. And that's a central hub that will help assist them.
All right, so I think that we're putting Yes We Can on that site also, so if people are interested, they can do that.
Yeah.
Did you learn anything about real politics? When you went into a community, did you have any actions with the regular pols, and what did you think about that?
I learned some about New York politics, and I think that there's definitely room for growth in terms of just kind of bringing this grassroots activism that's developed on a national level to the local level. I think it's very important that we're able to do that moving forward, because I think, you know, people kind of get into this routine where politics is a 4-year affair, where every 4 years it's a presidential election. You go and you vote in that, and you're done. But when in actuality, your politicians on a local level are going to be the ones, you know, instating the policy that affects your lives. And so I think it's important to kind of bring that grassroots activism to the local level, to hold our politicians accountable, to aid them if we can, and to kind of be able to engage in service on a local level, understanding that by doing so, we're actually, our small actions, if they're being kind of replicated throughout the country, holds the potential to make a very big impact.
But did you work with any local politicians that you liked?
I worked with you.
You worked with what?
With you.
With me? But I'm a retired politician.
I know, but still.
But didn't you meet any in any of the locations? Because, you know, underlying a lot of it is a lot of them really care.
Yeah.
And everybody does a local thing because they want those votes and that support in their district. Yeah. So I just wondered if you saw any potential, or if you think in some cases that you really need complete change, which I guess we always discuss. We've been debating this for, you know, my 50 years of my lifetime. Yeah. Do you run against these people? Do you become them? What happens when you win? Yeah. How do you stay? You know, there's a you said you preferred being on the outside. Yeah. It's a wonderful luxury to be on the outside. Yeah. And what happens when you get inside?
Remember, I mentioned Al Lowenstein to you. I've been studying him in school, and he always used to talk about like working within the system to bring about change. Right. So I think that's extremely important. I do think that there's, you know, more than a lot of potential when it comes to our local politicians. So I think that what we need to be cautious of, and I think this is what happened to a certain extent in the 60s, is coming in overbearingly, wanting to take over, you know, the political infrastructure without really taking the time to understand what that entails. And so I think it's important to build this generational consensus where our local politicians are mentoring the next generation of leaders, and where the next generation of leaders is receptive to this mentorship, and kind of aware of where our flaws lie. And I think it's extremely important not to be too presumptuous. I'm all for the audacity of hope, but at the same time, you know, I completely acknowledge that I have a lot to learn.
Yeah, it's interesting because we don't develop, I don't think, enough young talent in New York. Yeah. I'm always envious of other states, and that may just be because I don't know them. Yeah. And the impression that we give other places may be different. Yeah. But and especially now without term limits, you know, one of the benefits of term limits was that you had to get other people. At least we thought that. But then what happened was you got sisters and brothers and daughters and sons. Yeah. But I don't think we got any parents, but I'm not sure. It goes back to that question. Yeah. You know, how do you do it? And I think you have to work outside and inside.
I agree.
How did you get to Al Lowenstein? For the audience's sake, Al Lowenstein was a charismatic person who organized students during the 60s, was against the war, ran for Congress several times.
Johnson movement.
And the Dump Johnson movement, right. And served in Congress only for 2 terms, 1 term, I think. I don't even know.
Briefly.
And then later, unfortunately, was murdered by somebody. How did you find him?
I've been very interested in youth activism, especially when people started to refer to me as a youth activist, and I had no idea what that meant. And so I'm in the process of writing a thesis on the evolution of youth identity in the political arena.
Oh, that's
and so
interesting.
I've been looking at, you know, political figures who are able to tap into youth enthusiasm. I think that Barack Obama is one of those figures, but I think that what sets him apart is that he's given the privilege of having a history to refer to and to learn from. And I think he's picked up lessons from the 60s.
And a great education.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The NSA, is that how you got to Lowenstein, from the National Students Association?
Yeah.
and all of the different things that went on there.
Craziness.
Yeah, it was.
International conferences.
Yeah,
you know.
it was very exciting.
Yeah.
And of course, did you get to the point where some people thought it was a cover for the CIA?
I did get to that
Yeah.
point. I read Never Stop Running. And definitely saw that, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it was. It was. It's interesting. The Dump Johnson movement, in a way, was totally comparable to the Obama campaign.
Yeah. Where it was very grassroots.
Right. And people didn't think it would work, and they didn't think this would happen, and oh, don't pay attention.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it did. But it was, it's still questionable, I think, of it, as to whether the Vietnam War was ended because people complained or just because we got defeated. I mean, you know, it was a hard thing.
Yeah.
So what do you think you're going to do?
Next?
Yeah.
I want to definitely continue to just kind of remain committed to pursuing a career in public service. In what capacity that's going to happen, I have no idea. But for right now, I just want to absorb as much as I can, learn as much as I can. Everyone was, you know, I remember The Onion did a video on Obama supporters after the election. And there was a bunch of like zombies kind of walking around, and yeah, I guess there is an assumption
Who did that?
The Onion.
Who's that?
It's
The
satirical.
Onion.
Yeah.
Oh, the San Francisco. Yeah, The Onion. Okay.
So there's this assumption that Obama supporters are done now. But for me, I was never, you know, I was more excited about November 5th than I was November 4th. And the idea of waking up in this world where, you know, Barack Hussein Obama was president, and it had been accomplished because of the efforts of so many people.
It's very good. Yeah. You don't want to go and work for the government, you
I'm
don't
not
think?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, I've been able to explore New York through this campaign, even if it was just running around flying and just talking to people. And so I am interested in seeing what I can do on a local level.
Do you do you think ever you'll run for public office?
Maybe.
But it's not a driving force right now.
No.
I think that's a very good sign.
Yeah.
Because I think people who decide when they're 21, although Obama said he wanted to be president in kindergarten, so I don't know, maybe it's a good motivating thing. Yeah. But it's important to get a grounding. And will you be a resident of in New York?
I hope so.
You're going to stay as a voter in New York City?
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, that's very good, and there's a lot to do. So you can start with a local city government or something. Certainly we need that, right?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. Did you find that politics was the same in New York as it was in were you out west at all?
I did not make it west.
Right.
I went to Denver for the convention.
Yeah. But did you think that politics people were the same in the different locations that you went?
In terms, well, I think that people are fundamentally the same in a lot of senses, where, you know, I heard the same concerns voiced whether I was canvassing in Baltimore, Maryland, or in, you know, Scranton, Pennsylvania. It was people were worried about their jobs and worried about healthcare and worried about their children. And so I think that when it comes to what the commonalities we share as a people, it's kind of amazing when you take a moment to think about how similar our aims are. Everyone just wants to get by right now.
So do you think that that red state, blue state kind of thing that a lot of us have not liked from the beginning, that's kind of an artificial difference that people have cultivated?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do.
And I've always thought also that the spectrum, you know, I mean, all of this talk about the fact that Obama's moving to the middle, or that he's disappointing the left, or this and that that is so misleading in the process.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I think that what we need to be able to take a moment to do is and he says this all the time, disagree without being disagreeable.
Yeah.
And you definitely saw that in the case of Rick Warren. I'm a starch advocate of gay marriage. But at the same time, I understand what President-elect Obama was trying to do by allowing Rick Warren to give the invocation. He was bringing someone in who he disagreed with.
But you had a little sense, I did too.
Yeah.
A little tinge.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But then when they announced that the minister was going to do what is he going to do the day before?
It's a different
an important thing.
Yeah.
That was very good.
Yeah,
felt relieved a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to be a very difficult time for him, I think, with the package that he's putting in and the tax cuts and this and that and how he's going to do it. Do you think that people are ever going to get over feeling if they're a Republican they're going to have to stay Republicans?
I hope that they can. I really, because I do think that I don't think that one party has a complete ownership of good ideas. And I think that we need to be able to, especially in these times, especially given, you know, the state of our economy, what's going on internationally, we need to be able to just kind of take a step back and give up clinging to our ideologies. And this is what it was about politicians that turned me off in the first place. I felt like Washington was a place that politicians went armed with their ideologies, completely unwilling to compromise, completely insisting that they knew the right way, and that if everyone just complied with them, that everything would be perfect. I don't think that's the case. And so I'm hoping that what President Obama will be able to do is just kind of moderate between the two parties in a sense. And
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I always got minded with my own colleagues, when they just are by rote having certain positions that you just find so ridiculous.
Oh,
you know?
for sure.
Yeah, and it's a very important thing.
Yeah.
Did you also look into people like Bella Abzug and things like that, or was it Lowenstein because of the youth? I guess that was what it was.
Yeah. Youth, yeah.
Who else are some of the activists with young people?
I've been looking into just the life and career of Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
Oh wow, there's so many. I've been looking at Students for Nonviolent Coordinating Committee.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I've been looking at the legacy of Martin Luther King. Right. Civil rights movement. I've been looking even at the extremes. I've been looking at the Weather Underground to kind of see what went wrong there. A whole bunch of people who are now authors. Todd Gitlin, I've been reading a lot of. So it's definitely been very interesting.
So you're interested in continuing that with youth?
Yes.
And with a political education, or just organizing around what? What are the issues you think that they would have to be organizing for?
I think it's going to be, a platform. I'm in the process of trying to develop a platform right now. Just kind of wrapping my mind around all the, there's a ton of issues that need to be dealt with, and they need to be prioritized. And I don't want to just have an opinion because it's, the popular opinion or the Democratic Party's opinion. I really want to understand what I'm, signing up for. And so I'm in the process of doing all of that research. But what I definitely do believe, without a doubt, is something that Robert Kennedy said, and that's that the answer is the world's hope, it is to rely on youth. And I think that young people for so long have been told that because of our relative age, we're unable to really do anything on a large scale. And I think that mentality has been disproven by this election. Young people came out in droves for Barack Obama, and they worked on his campaign. They were put in leadership positions. The campaign was definitely receptive to giving young people the opportunity to kind of let their imaginations run wild in terms of being creative and bringing all of these different skill sets to the table that are specific to this generation, just because of our position with technology and social networking sites.
What age group do you define as young people?
I think anywhere from 18 to 35 is a young person.
That's interesting.
So I can be young for a while.
And what about younger than 18?
They're still young people too.
Because they're going to have to be cultivated, and they have an advantage having been around for this campaign. I'll tell you a very funny story. My grandson, who is 8 years old, was with another 8-year-old going to school with the other little boy's mother, and she had to stop for gas. And this was after the gas prices started going down, and Eli said to the other boy, "See, I told you Obama was going to make a difference." And it was just astonishing. This is an 8-year-old who had the same hopes and everything else. So it's going to, it is good. They're already kind of in it.
Oh, yeah.
And we can't let that drop. But what do you call them?
They're still young people, too. And then you actually raise a very great point, and it reminds me, I spoke at James Baldwin High School during the campaign, and I was up against a McCain representative who, was much more renowned than I am. And they're all high schoolers, and they were like all Obama supporters, and cheering me on, whispering stuff. The McCain representative brought up Barack Obama's lack of experience, and someone was like, Abraham Lincoln. And so it was just very encouraging to see how aware they are.
Yeah, it's very. The lack of experience is interesting because it's become such a major subject in New York State as we wonder who the governor is going to appoint. And they keep saying, Carolyn Kennedy has no experience, but I thought we learned in the campaign that
Yeah.
that's not the major requirement.
No, I agree.
What do you
I don't think that experience is a prerequisite.
And it can be corrupting.
Yeah, it can be, for
Yeah.
sure. I think that open-mindedness, ambition, drive, just kind of the ability to think outside of the box, I think those qualities are much more important than experience, because I think that when you have those qualities, that makes your experiences that you've had to date that much more kind of rounded. I think that Barack Obama's life experiences were able to, once he did go into the state Senate, into the U.S. Senate, he was able to absorb much more because he was so, you know,
open to everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's just go back. The National Week of Service.
Sure.
You are coordinating the efforts in New York State?
I am.
And you oversee, or you know about the website, and just one more time, say where they go?
usaservice.org.
And you hope that people will do it.
I do.
And it's fun, isn't it?
It's a blast. It is, and you know, it's kind of, for those of us who supported Barack Obama over the election, November 4th represented an opportunity for us. This is also our turn.
Yeah.
We're as responsible as he is for what happens next.
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. I know the future will be safer if you're participating.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very
for having
much.
me.
If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.